In his annual financial disclosure report released today, conservative Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas disclosed 3 trips aboard a private plane that were paid for by his billionaire friend, Harlan Crow. To give us a little insight, we invited the Hill's Zach Schonfeld. And thank you so much, Zach, for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
So first, let's just talk about what this disclosure actually reveals.
Sure. So this is the annual financial disclosure that all 9 justices of the Supreme Court, as well as all other federal judges for that matter, have to fill out. But it was notable because it's the first disclosure that we've seen from Justice Thomas since there has been a firestorm of ethics accusations against him. Back earlier this spring, ProPublica had published a series of stories about trips, undisclosed trips that Justice Thomas had accepted from Harlan Crow, a billionaire and Republican mega donor, over many years, as well as a real estate transaction between the two men back in 2014 that was also not reported. So now that we've gotten this first annual financial disclosure from the conservative justice, he now has disclosed 3 trips that he took last year, paid for by Harlan Crow. He also filed a number of amendments to his past year's forms, including disclosing for the first time that 2014 real estate deal that ProPublica first surfaced in some of its reports back in April. So certainly one of the first times that we're seeing now Justice Thomas having to respond to all of this attention on ethics at the Supreme Court.
Okay, and we'll get to his response in just a moment. Can you give us a little insight on Crowe and his relationship with the justice, and what are critics really saying about this new development?
Sure. So the disclosure that we got today, really in terms of substance, we did know that these trips were taking place. We knew about the relationship between the two men. Here, it is now just being disclosed for the first time. But it does, as we know, as I've said, the two men have been friends for years. And according to ProPublica, beyond the 3 trips that were disclosed in this 2022 report, according to ProPublica, Justice Thomas has been accepting these luxury trips across the United States, as well as a number of international trips over many years, stretching back decades to even his early years on the court. Justice Thomas is the longest serving justice currently on the Supreme Court. So their friendship and these trips are nothing new, but what is new is the scrutiny over it. Democrats and judicial watchdog groups have said that Justice Thomas was always obligated to report these trips. Justice Thomas has pushed back on that notion. He said he was advised that he did not need to do so until some guidance was updated earlier this year surrounding gift disclosure rules. But Democrats and judicial watchdog groups have effectively accused him of ethical impropriety. Now, Thomas and his allies will note that Harlan Crow doesn't really have a lot of direct business before the court, but that nonetheless has not stopped Democrats and others from trying to push for more strong ethics standards at the Supreme Court. Namely, among them, they want the Supreme Court justices to adopt some sort of binding code of ethics. One of the biggest criticisms that we've seen from Democrats has been that the Supreme Court justices are effectively left to police their own ethics, and that there is no binding code of ethics. So whether or not there may have been an actual issue and a conflict of interest here between Clarence Thomas and Harlan Crow, they say it's the fact that there is no way for them to police these kinds of things.
Okay. And just lastly, what comes next after all of this?
Well, the Supreme Court is still out on its summer recess. They'll come back into the courtroom on the first Monday in October for their next term. And when they come back, they will again start their normal routine of meeting every week behind closed doors to discuss the cases that week. But we also know that the justices in these private door meetings have been discussing a potential disethics code. Now, so far, they have been unable to come to any sort of agreement. Like I said, we know that they've been discussing it, but so far we haven't seen any ethics code produced by the 9 justices. And I think it's put the Chief Justice, John Roberts, in a bit of a tough spot. He's someone who has publicly said that he wants to see the Supreme Court take more steps to abide by higher standards of ethics. But at the end of the day, he's going to need to be able to pull along Clarence Thomas and his fellow justices along to come to some sort of agreement if they want to change the current ethics standards at the court. So with this issue issue being deeply partisan on Capitol Hill, with Democrats pushing an ethics bill, Republicans opposing it, saying it's just an attack on the court's conservative majority. For now, it's really being left up to the justices themselves to try to come to some sort of agreement. But like I said, so far, nothing has come of it.
Okay, Zach from the Hill, thank you so much for your insight.
Thanks for having me.